Once upon a time, there was a girl named Callie. Every day she felt like there was always something new happening. Even though she felt it was a normal life, she always considered it an adventure. She was always happy to meet new people and make new friends. It was one day in particular she decided she was going to make it all better. It was a Tuesday morning. Callie checked the weather forecast. Sunny with a 30% chance of rain and a high of 73. She didn't care for rain very much, but she knew Emery loved the rain. He'd always stand in the downpour while Callie insisted for him to get under the umbrella with her. She never understood how he could enjoy the rain that much. But his love for things she could barely tolerate was one of the things Callie liked about him. Today, Callie decided that she would ask him out. They had been best friends since they were 5. Callie couldn't imagine her life without him. She went and got ready for the day. "Don't eat your cereal too fast or you'll get hiccups," Callie's mom told her as she scarfed down her breakfast. "Sorry, Mom," Callie responded with a mouthful. She finished her breakfast and gathered the rest of her stuff. "Looks like your bus is right down the road," Callie's dad announced. "We better get going before we have to throw you to school." Callie hugged her parents goodbye and ran to the bus stop. She got on the bus as it arrived and looked for Emery. She spotted him and sat next to him. "Sometimes I wish you waved to me so I could spot you easier, but I know how shy you are," Callie stated to Emery. "Sorry," Emery replied. "I would have if we were the only ones on the bus. But then it would have been pointless." "I know that. I'd be waving hello. Hello, by the way." "Hello," Callie chuckled. The rest of the way to school, they pretty much talked about Emery's pet cat and how it would always jump on his lap whenever he was trying to do something. When they got to school, they split up to go to their own classes. At lunch, Callie went to sit where she and Emery always sat. Emery was already there, but so were her other friends, Amberlyn and Rose. "You're the last one here again. You must hate us," Rose teased. Callie sat down and started eating. "You guys were closer to the cafeteria," Callie explained. "It's not my fault my last class was on the other side of the school." "My last class was science, so I was right next to the cafeteria when the bell rang." "I hate science," Amberlyn jumped in. "It doesn't make any sense to me. Can't wait to graduate this year." "Everything's usually just a blur to me," Callie stated as she finished off her mac and cheese. "Emery, quick, what's 2 plus 4? Rose quizzed. 6, Emery answered. "Okay, I just wanted to make sure you were paying attention." "Paying attention to what? You guys were just talking about hating science, distance from the cafeteria, and how Callie hates us." "I don't hate you guys," Callie exclaimed. "If I fell, I trust that you guys would catch me." "Only if someone didn't pay me not to catch you," Emlyn joked. After lunch ended, they went on to the rest of their classes. Callie couldn't wait for the school to end, so she could get on with her plans. Her heart raced thinking about it. Eventually, the last bell rang. Callie rushed out of her last class and ran to find Emery, who was already at the bus stop. She found him and they started talking. Callie held off from asking because she was so nervous. The bus came and they got on. They mostly talked about what they would do after graduation, how Callie wanted to go to college just like her older brother. The bus arrived at Emery's stop. Emery stood up to get off. "See you tomorrow," Emery half muttered. He got off the bus. Callie panicked. She didn't want to miss her chance, but she felt it was already too late. Callie decided it wasn't too late. She stood up and got off the bus, even though it wasn't her stop. She called out to Emery as the bus drove off. Emery stopped walking and looked at her. Callie ran over to Emery. "I wanted to ask you, do you want to go on a date with me? Tonight at 7 at the movie theater?" Callie questioned. "Of course, I'll be there," Emery promised. They both smiled and Emery continued to walk to his house. Callie waved goodbye. Callie turned to head home. Her home was a block away. She started running. When she got home, she told her parents about how she had a date later. They congratulated her and helped her prepare. Callie's dad drove her to the movie theater. They arrived at exactly 7, and Emery was already there. Callie's dad drove home and Callie and Emery went inside to watch a movie. They bought popcorn and soda and watched a movie about a man who ended up in a different reality every time he woke up from sleep. After the movie, They talked about it while walking outside. They walked to the nearby park. Suddenly, Emery sat down on a bench and stared at the horizon. Callie was confused at first, but then she noticed the sun was setting. She sat down right next to him and watched. Emery surprised Callie when he leaned his head on her shoulder. They watched the sun set behind the hills. Callie and Emery looked at each other and knew what was coming. Emery lifted his head off Callie's shoulder. They started to lean in a bit, then they closed their eyes. Then Callie woke up. It took a while for Callie's mom to arrive at the hospital when the nurse called her. Callie thought she looked different. She looked like she had gotten older. She also had a funny smell on her. Callie's mom kneeled next to the bed. "Callie," her mom said, "I'm so glad you're awake. It's been so long." "Where am I?" Callie asked. "Where you've been for the last 13 years, in the hospital. You've been in a coma since you were 4. I what?" Callie couldn't wrap her head around it. "Yes, you're lucky to get to sleep for so long. That was a terrible car accident. You were lucky no one died. Your older brother had glass lodged in his earlobe, and your father broke several bones. Where is Dad? Is he not coming here? Your father and I divorced years ago. He's somewhere on the other side of the country. What about Zach? Your older brother ran off 2 years after you went into your coma. His body was found a week later with bullet holes. What about..." Callie was about to ask about Emery, and then she remembered. She felt her heart drop and her stomach churn. Her mom said she'd been in a coma since she was 4. Callie and Emery had been best friends since they were 5. "I'll go make arrangements to bring you home. You just try to finish waking up." Callie's mom left the room, and the nurse followed her. Callie started crying almost immediately. She almost got everything she wanted, but then she found out none of it actually happened. Even worse, her actual life was already on a terrible start. She couldn't imagine how much worse it could get. Callie arrived home with her mom. She stepped out of the rusty car that felt like it was going to break apart when her mom hit the brakes. The house looked mostly similar, except the paint seemed more dull. Callie's mom opened the door to the house and they stepped inside. There was a strong, horrible mix of odors. The trash can was buried by a pile of trash to the point where it was not visible. There were random liquids and mushy solids all over the floor. Callie physically gagged. "By the way," Callie's mom said, now noticing her daughter about to vomit, "you're going to sleep on the sofa tonight. I now use your old room for when I want to bring my work home." Callie looked in the fridge. Everything looked like it expired before she went into a coma. What have you been eating?" Callie asked. She said it quietly enough so her mom didn't hear what she said. However, her mom did notice she was looking in the fridge. "Oh, yeah, just make yourself something there. I'd love to have mother-daughter bonding time, but I'm going back to work. I've got bills to pay, and these are the profit hours." Callie shut the fridge and turned around. Her mom had gotten into her underwear and was now putting a large, heavy coat on. She opened the door. "Oh, and by the way, I got you something." Callie's mom pointed to the table. On it, surrounded by legal and illegal drugs, was a cheap pair of underwear. Callie looked at her mom. "What?" "In about a week or so, when you're fully recovered, you can come work with me. We'll make tons more money. But, don't worry, I won't let you do guys with STDs. I'm a thoughtful mother, after all." Callie's mom shut the door, leaving Callie alone in the deteriorating house. Callie stood there for a solid 2 minutes, trying to contemplate what her life had turned into. The fumes of the house burned her eyes. Callie stepped outside and started walking. Callie looked at the town, and she took her long walk. Her long walk. A lot of it was familiar, but a lot of it was also very different. Nothing was exactly as her mind had it for the last 13 years. She saw lots of people. Subconsciously, she looked for Emery. She never saw anyone who looked remotely like him. Callie kept walking. Eventually, she reached a big bridge. It was something she remembered, but it looked like there was construction being done on it. Callie had an idea. She found a large chunk of concrete with a cord. She hadn't been able to physically move for 13 years, so she was pretty weak. Callie had to move the concrete chunk with the dolly. She managed to tie one end of the cord around the chunk of concrete. Then she started going across the bridge. She eventually made it to the middle of the bridge. The railing was in the middle of being replaced, so a plastic fence temporarily took its place. Callie easily slipped under it. She used all her might to move the large chunk of concrete off the dolly and to the edge of the bridge. Then she tied the other end of the cord to her waist. Without a second thought, she used all her might to push the chunk of concrete off the bridge. When it slipped off, it yanked her right off her feet as it plummeted towards the water below. She felt like she was falling forever until the chunk of water hit the concrete. The splash flung water up into the air, which then rained down. The concrete initially pushed the water out of the way, so Callie didn't die on impact. But when the water did catch up to Callie, it felt like Amberlynn, Rose, and Emery were catching her and then throwing her into a pit of flames. The water entered her body every way it could in the most painful way. She felt her water-logged lungs plead for help. Her guts felt as if they were in a shredder as the concrete and the cord dragged. Her lips, which still waited for the kiss that never happened, stung as she opened them as wide as possible to scream with no use. When the rock hit the bottom, Callie started to black out. She hoped to see Emery again, but she saw only darkness. Her tears mixed with the water around her until, like the rest of her body, they stopped. Callie's body remained in more raindrops than she could tolerate. The end.